question is, where do you see sourcing teams most often losing control when they are under pressure to move faster?
Usually when this happens is already the business is saying procurement is too late, right? And you're talking about you're stuck in the middle of something within that process you had. Most of the time is like the approvals, right? Or you haven't gotten on time the quotes, or you haven't sent out the PO, stuff like that. That's where we start getting like, well, procurement is stuck. Why is this happening? Why are they too slow? Why is everything too late? And I think the real issue in there is why is and what I've seen is always, especially when you have so many changes, and I think Miro just touched a little bit on that. Why is that engineering spec too late? Sometimes we haven't even been able to figure out what we really need, or how this product needs to be developed, and according to which requirements and norms and so on. And procurement not being aligned with that and not being actually in that conversation is actually what brings in all the other things later, where those things start popping, right? Like the control, the awarding, the sourcing committee, and saying like, and where you trying to bypass or cut or scramble, but it's actually, if that spec would have been developed, maybe, jointly with that supplier, maybe where procurement would also have that visibility, what's coming up, and not until that design is really frozen.
Yeah.
Then I think you have a different conversation. And
So it's never procurement's fault then, it's always engineering.
No, I mean,
That's what I'm joking. I'm joking. No, what I'm hearing here is... Sorry, go on.
I'm just saying, like, by design. So if you think about everything and all the interfaces you need to go through, right? Because the same question, if you ask that to a quality engineer, he will have the same issue as well, right? Mm-hmm. So by design, it's like, if all parties don't have that internal alignment, then of course you start trying to go faster, or trying to shorten times where process probably plays their role, right?
We hear this all the time on every webinar. Sorry,
just one question, Dan and Oscar. One point. I think this is exactly illustrating the situation what Oscar just said, because a lot of the times when the question is, how do we react under pressure? A lot of times we are under pressure as a consequence of something else, and we look at the symptoms, what we see at the moment, and we focus on it. And this is in my experience as well. We try to save the time and move quicker in that situation, which is sort of after the fact. And I get what Oscar is saying, that and I agree, if we move upstream and resolve the issues there, drawing, specification, alignment with the stakeholders, weighting criteria when it comes to the awarding the business afterwards, all the communication and everybody is aligned, then we are far better off when it comes to the moving at that situation, which we are preventing it from happening, basically.
And this is what we hear all the time, and I hear it all the time in customer conversations as well. It's about getting procurement properly embedded into the organization, because if they're not properly embedded and not properly respected, and if the process isn't respected, and they're just seen as a last minute kind of, oh yes, we've got to include procurement now to get the approval done, like that's the major problem. But I want to change the scenario slightly, because I want to get to a different answer. Not that I've got any preconceptions of what the answer might be, but I want to know, in a situation where in this mystical land where procurement is properly baked into the whole process, and everybody goes to procurement at the right time, it's all operating as it should. And it might take you a few minutes to kind of picture this place. But in that situation, where it is just literally a case of actually there's a real problem, like that fire situation, Miro, where it's like, okay, like right now, yes, fair enough, we didn't have all of the backup plans that we needed to, but procurement is there immediately when it happens. They're immediately informed that they need to help get this over the line quickly. Like, can you give some kind of advice or some kind of anecdotes around like where you've seen things go wrong in that situation, where it's like, if you're under pressure as a sourcing team to deliver something quickly, what are the trade-offs that are okay to make, and what are the trade-offs that are not okay to make, like in general?
Well, you in this situation, for example, where we had to react fast on that over flooded supply underwater. We had to get all the bits and pieces together quickly before we went to the market. That means drawings, that means specification, requirements, quality requirements. We had to talk to the other departments to be able to gather the information, which you normally do when you go when you want to run a tender or RFP. But you have a really limited amount of time to gather all that. So you focus on it. You dedicate the capacity from yourself and from your team to work on it with the priority, and you just move as fast as you can. You don't really have a time then to be able to run the proper end-to-end cycle. You have to pick up the phone, you have to call them, you have to visit them, you have to, in a couple of days, you have to be able to go through everything, which normally takes weeks. And yeah, but when it comes to the trade-offs,
I've
you cannot really do much of the trade-offs, because when it comes to quality, health and safety, those are the factors which you cannot do any shortcut
I
with.
I would disagree a bit on it. I'm well, actually, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I would add something in there. I do think there's a trade-off, and it goes into, I think, that conversation between the speed and maybe the compliance. And I mean, what helps in all these things is documentation, right? So you're making consciously a business decision that you're going to go this road, and you're going to have to sacrifice for that period maybe quality, maybe, right? With an interim permit, for instance. But there's a conscious decision that you're saying, well, this is what we're going to do for the time being. It's going to be not 100% part or 99.99, but it's going to be a functional part. And in the meantime, once we get everything else, then we can replace them or whatever. But you're documenting that decision that you're doing jointly with the business and saying, this is what we need to do. And it goes off that process that was designed, right? It goes way completely off. And that's, if you want to go from that governance compliance perspective, I think that's a trade-off to actually get the things running and saying, well, I'm not going to get the documentation for this or the testing or everything else on time, because that's what actually I'm trading off, but I'm going to get the parts on time. So that's where I would just disagree a bit.
It's a good point,
because you need to at the end evaluate what is riskier and what is costlier. What costs me more?
It's a trade-off, Oscar. I think I agree, but it's not really a trade-off, because you're adjusting the specification. You are making sure that you can come up with a new, quicker solution for your problem, which at the end can be permanent solution if it's good enough for the factory. So you're tweaking, you're developing very fast from your current situation to the new situation, which might long term become the permanent situation if it's good enough. So yeah, it's trade-off from the beginning. Yeah, that you're giving something out, different coating, different tolerance to be able to get the parts fast. But at the end, if it's okay for this solution, why wouldn't it be okay for the regular serial production.
I mean, that's where you go back to into, okay, so what happened, right? You do that post-mortem, your 8D or whatever. Okay, what is going on because if you keep falling into that situation, then there's something not all right. And then there's structurally within your way of functioning and executing, there's something not all right. And that's where you
Guys, I
need to
want to
start
move
looking.
on.
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue, Oscar. I know you don't even know what the second question is, but it's a perfect segue into the second question, which is for mid-market procurement teams, it's they often face enterprise-level risk without enterprise-level resource. What should they standardize first if they want faster sourcing without adding bureaucracy? So essentially, you were alluding there, Oscar, to the fact that like there's something wrong with the standard processes if these emergencies keep on happening. So let's just say we can't affect the rest of the business for now. Let's say it's like the procurement's reasonably well baked in to the business. But what should the procurement team, when it comes to sourcing, what should they be standardizing and getting off to like a really polished kind of process or set of processes to make themselves more mature, to make sure that even under pressure, that they know exactly what they're doing and that they're going to still drive a thorough, compliant process. They might take some shortcuts if absolutely necessary, but just so that it's rather than just being like, everything's on fire, panic. Like, what should they have as their processes, as their standardized processes or policies to make sure that they're in a good position?
I think that would be yeah. So if you are if your process says something and you're constantly just doing something else, then that gap first of all needs to be addressed, and that means that process doesn't even speak to the reality, right? So alone there, you already have something that where you cannot start with. If you're talking about standardization, and I would just skip first all the documents and all the interfaces or whatever. In my view, what you need to first standardize when you're talking about procurement and sourcing is to look and say, okay, really standardize who decides first and to what threshold. You take that control away, and I think you can really design anything else just the way the business wants it, and where procurement can also live with it. So, again, decision rights, I think, approval thresholds.
So what you're saying is there should be thresholds that clearly demark like when procurement gets involved, or which people within procurement, which levels of approvals are required. What specifically?
Yeah, exactly. So up to what point is really procurement involved, right? Is it really for just every minor 1 cent change? Yeah. Where is, and then also in those approvals, like when do I need director level approval? When do I need C-level approval? And why? Right? Is it really for just any single change relatively euro-based, percentage-based? Where is the capacity for, the business executioners, engineering, quality, procurement, to have that room to decide and say, well, this is in my power to decide and in my view. Because everything else, if you look at, can be shaped, can be tailored, but this really decides up to when your level of how do you call it, of your mandate ends, right?
Okay, interesting.
Yes, I would add. I agree. I would add on top of that we talked about flooding or emergency situation. I think the procurement teams in manufacturing doesn't need to experience that to be under pressure. They are under pressure because they lack time most of the time. They have tons of things to do, and they don't have the time to focus on the important things what they want to do, which is actually moving the needle forward. You name it, yeah. Excel version 12, approval processes, getting answering the emails for the 5th time, the same thing for the different functions. Everything which you have to do in order to react prompt to give the information further, but it's repeating meetings, endless meetings. And then at the end of the day, you have a certain amount of time which you can then dedicate on a things that matters. And I think what I would advise those procurement teams is to, yes, of course, use tools, sourcing tools to be able to run that strategic part of their job better and more professional, but focus on that part before and remove it, eliminate it, automate it to gain time which you need then to be able in order to be more strategic, more forward looking, more business oriented. Then you have a time to go to the meetings, to talk to the finance guys, to the production leaders, to be able to work with them on the joint goals rather than just the saving pennies here and there.
Yeah, so just to summarize what we've been saying here, so first of all, there needs to be a clear understanding of the mandate of like when does procurement, for example, kick in? When is it them? When is it their show? When is it up to them to control the process? Not necessarily make the decision on who the supplier or the suppliers will be, but to create the decision criteria, to create the process, and then to hand that information with recommendations over to the decision maker. That's the first thing. And also, and I'm glad you said it, Miro, because I was going to say it otherwise, is tech. It can be used certainly to speed up the processes, to automate, to partially automate, and just to reduce the admin. And it blows my mind that there's still like so many organizations out there, procurement organizations, that don't use tech and are still doing things manually. It also blows my mind that there's very clunky solutions. I'm not speaking about any in particular, but solutions that actually somehow manage to make the process longer. And it's like, it's time to stop all of that, especially with the advent of generative AI. Like, it is a whole new world. And let's be very, very clear before we even get into this. AI is not I was going to say it's not a magic wand. It can be a bit of a magic wand, but it's certainly not infallible. And we all know that it makes mistakes. Yeah. And therefore you can't just point to AI at every problem. But I think what's important is understanding like where can AI and tech in general just help with these processes. So a question back to both of you is like tech or AI. I mean, predominantly AI, but if you want to talk about tech as well, like if AI is going to help sourcing teams, should it be focusing more on creating faster processes, or do you think it should be there to help drive more compliant processes? And obviously you have the option to say both, but what do you think is more important, driving the speed or helping drive the compliance?
Just to circle back to the final thing from the last points, and actually going also to this one, because AI definitely it has to be part of this conversation, right? I give you, and I mean, again, I accept that you do need tech to get that standardization as well. I mean, get out of the spreadsheets and the emails, get the audit trail correctly, so I do see why the tech is super important. And even nowadays, AI, and if you're not using AI, I mean, seriously, guys, what are we doing? Because this conversation we should have been having like 2-3 years ago, not today. If we're right now still talking about where should AI earn its place, blah, 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 I think we're way too late. We're late to the party. We should be using rather talking about cases where we have been applying it, where it works, where it doesn't. And just to circle back with all of that, so we need to make use of all of this. But again, AI and the tech will not get you that governance in place, right? That's actually, you need to really focus and say, okay, who decides, who is up to what flexibility can we shape out and tailor our effects and so on and so forth, rather than standardizing things that we don't even know if are adding value to the business. Now, sorry, to your question was,
Well, we can change the question. I'm happy to change the question. It's just I am aware that there's generally in the marketplace within procurement, from my understanding, lots of people have tried AI, but they weren't really sure where to try it, and they've had, some have had good results, but most haven't seen kind of. From what I'm reading and listening to in the marketplace, they haven't felt as though they've really hit the nail on the head with AI. They were just under a lot of pressure to use it one way or another. Sometimes that AI is just Microsoft.
Copilot.
Copilot,
right?
that's just built into the package. Or some people are using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini outside of that. So I think people are using it in terms of their daily work, but not necessarily to kind of really improve their processes or to elevate the whole of procurement. It seems to be like a bit of an add-on that they're doing. But I'm just wondering from your opinions, what you've seen or what you think should be like a really good way to use AI, and is it more centered around speeding things up? Is it more centered around driving better compliance? Is it a mixture of both? Is it something else?
Let me go, Oscar.
Go on.
You
Go on.
have just finished your point, so let me jump in at this stage. My thinking there, and in my experience, then I think I have a very simple opinion about this, because everybody, as Oscar said, including me, is or should be taking all the benefits AI can give to you in your work and private life, and use it as much as you can, because there is the benefit. And when we circle back to the smaller companies or the manufacturing procurement teams, I think they should, and in my experience, some of them they actually do as well. But most of them, they still don't. They hesitate. They don't have the approvals. Their internal organizational policies doesn't allow them to go further. Is to focus on exactly what they need to do in order to save the time of their work, the time of the task which takes weeks to do, the fifth email, 12th version of the Excel sheet, let's say, the communication between the departments to create something which is fast, so to save time, and serve all the functions and people involved in that circle, and that alone is saving time, especially for the smaller and medium companies, where they need to focus on the right things. They need to focus on the market. They need to focus on the margin. They need to focus on expansion. Whatever their strategy is, they should be able to dedicate as much time as they need to those activities, including strategic procurement, rather than going in a circle when it comes to the internal communication or updating some files or reporting. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Oscar?
I mean, just to add in there, I think, where should I start? You need to differentiate what do you want to achieve, right, with AI? And I think there's so many definitions of what AI means or is, and probably not everyone gets it the right way. Also, with when it comes to like building agents, and with that I mean the Copilot agent is for me not an agent, but you need to differentiate at least what you want to like automate and what you really want to generate with artificial intelligence. At least this clear, you could actually even go into 4 things, but at least these 2 things you need to really set aside and say, okay, what can I, through RPA or an API or a connector, can I automate and just display data from one system to the other and to the other, and like also combine it and use it and blah, blah. And what do I really need, like, to just use or gather all that information and then generate something and, get that output. if you don't have that distinction already, that gets you on a different level of complexity, because just adding AI to something like that might not just be will not be efficient. Will just automate your chaos faster.
And multiply it. Yeah.
And then gets to that narrative that you're saying, that, well, everyone's just trying to test this and that, but it's not working, right? So it's that kind of stuff. Then if we're talking about sourcing, again, it needs to be into like, okay, what do I want to achieve with it? Do I need to be faster? My issue is, or my bottleneck is, that we take just simply way too long to define requirements every time I launch an RFQ. Okay, then we start nailing down one problem where we say, okay, do we have a knowledge base based on, the last 50 RFQs over the last 10 years or whatever, where we have similar stuff? There you go. There's a pedestrian use case to already apply it, and apply it on a target manner that will definitely help you to what? To generate your RFP briefing or RFQ briefing, to help you out, identify also potential gaps towards what you have already, and be like, well, in the past you have done this kind of things. Probably you should also consider, this set of requirements.
Absolutely.
Same thing with supplier scouting. If you're only relying on Google to find a supplier, or maybe the database of the association of sheet metal, blah blah blah, that's also somewhere where you can start, and pulling AI to scrape your things according to the norms that you need, and pulling also the internal knowledge and saying like, well, because the AI might bring you in some of suppliers that you say, well, these guys are better because of this and this and that, right? So those are just simple cases where actually AI works. It's giving you that speed. Compliance is rather by design and not because of AI. But that's two cases. The other one, of course, you start quoting, you get those still today, and I still see it here in Germany. I still see you get all those quotes via email, and the buyer still needs to get all those Excels in their big screen if they have one, and start copying and pasting all this data. This thing, whether it gets through a tool, through email, automation with AI, or not, quote comparison, that should be happening already today. This is work that should not be done by a person. The evaluation of that quote and the judgment, yes. But all these things should
preparation, the decision preparation process needs to be massively sped up and automated. Yeah, agreed. Miro, anything to add on that?
No, not at the moment, Dan.
I'm just going to take this opportunity to shamelessly plug the DeepStream solution, because I think even if I do say so myself, I think we've really delivered some powerful AI capabilities, and it's not all about AI. The core product has to be really strong and has to have the flexibility. I don't think it's just about throwing AI at processes, but the exciting bits that I'd like to quickly talk about is that we have AI that helps cover most of the areas that you just mentioned, Oscar. So supply discovery, the ability to create RFXs quickly by just dumping in stakeholder documents, like not templated, not structured in a particular way, just dump them in. And then there's a few other bits, but the exciting part for me, and the part that we're really doubling down on, is something called the virtual center of excellence. So that's because what I've seen is I've seen a couple of really large organizations, procurement organizations, who've had a really strong center of excellence where they're really on top of it. They've got this team of people who are absolute experts, and they're going out supporting the rest of the procurement team to drive these best practices. But the vast majority of time, I have seen that doesn't work, because what ends up happening is there's just a big library of documents with processes, and then as soon as there's an emergency, or even when there's not an emergency, actually, no one's going into that library. No one remembers all of the training. They're just going and doing the process, either manually or through a solution. The solution obviously can give some kind of drive some compliance because you can structure the processes, but you don't want them to be too rigid. So the thing that I'm super excited about is that we've got something called this virtual center of excellence, where whoever it is, the head of procurement or maybe a small team of people, they just dump in the policies, the best practices, maybe even key objectives, category specific information, etc. And then whenever somebody goes to run a sourcing event, they just either type in a prompt, say, create me this sourcing event, or they dump in the stakeholder documents, and the AI will drive to make sure that that process it'll drive the compliance. It will look for gaps. It will look for where best practices and compliance haven't been adhered to, and it will bring that layer of governance in. So I think that's pretty cool, and that's where I see DeepStream absolutely doubling down on, is that whenever you go to run a sourcing event, you've got that AI assistant that's saying, you haven't included this, you haven't done this, what about if this happens, do you need some backup for that, etc. And then after that, we've also got the ability to ingest the responses from the suppliers, and even if it's coming from very long answers and multiple documents, etc., just provide side-by-side apples with apples comparisons, split into the evaluation sections, so you can much more easily evaluate and score. And then the best part, well, the second best part, I should say, is the AI analytics, where you're able to just type in any prompt or press a pre-prompted button to do any kind of analysis and see multiple award scenarios that you can easily act on, and then put them into what we call a canvas and share them with the decision makers so they can see the executive summary, the charts, the graphs, the award scenarios, and your recommendations. So they're areas that I'm super bullish on, because they're the areas that we focused on. Any thought that, well, I don't want to say any thoughts on that in particular, but maybe there's something else that you've seen or that's outside of what I've just mentioned that you've seen that's particularly powerful, or maybe something that you've tried that's not so powerful and didn't actually stand up to scrutiny?
No, I'm actually curious on how many mid-market enterprises have really a center of excellence?
Exactly, we don't. Yeah.
So, quite curious about it and how that adoption would actually play in. Because, I mean, it's actually a brilliant idea. Because, yeah, again, mid-market, so enterprise, of course, enterprise, you have, a full army of people actually just taking care of it and trying to improve you and provide you all the tools for you as a category manager and everything that you have everything you need to, start doing, procurement in an excellence way, but not mid-market, right? That's the reality. And that plays a little bit into a part of like, sometimes that really end-to-end process, yeah, is not even fully defined, right? Sometimes they don't even know how to. And that's where people like me jump in. Or me.
No, absolutely. But that's where, Oscar, we're going to work so it's really, I'm really glad that you brought that up, actually. So there's the company center of excellence in the platform, but then there's also the DeepStream center of excellence, so that when there's gaps, or for companies that are less mature that don't have those best practices, it will tap into our best practices. They're not going to have every single thing. It's not going to have every single thing that each company is going to need, but it's going to help give them an extra level of that of those best practices. But no, that's a great point, and that's exactly where people like you and Miro come in. Guys, we're going to wrap this up because we're just at the 45, just coming up to the 45 minute, 45th minute. Anything else you want to add before we finish? Either one of you?
I don't know. What do you have like a closing question or?
Well, no, I did have another question, but time wise, we've run out of time. So okay, I don't know if you want to give me like a just to reiterate the most important things that you would suggest people focus on, like if they're in mid-market, and there's some like a top priority that you should say before you do anything else, go and do this. What would that be, Oscar?
Forget about control. I think we get lost a lot in control and trying to control things, and that's where we start losing speed. That's where we start questioning things, and no one takes a decision. And so just forget about control. Focus on what you want to achieve with that specific situation, because that's actually what the business needs. And don't get lost in that process, because I've said this also before. When in procurement process becomes your product, then something is not right. Yeah.
Very
So,
wise remarks. Thank you. Miro.
I would just probably say again what I said before is that I think the priority in my mind, and for those people who might be listening from manufacturing here, should be to use tech AI on the things they don't want to do, the things that they're adding no value to them or to the business, and try to eliminate that friction, reduce it completely as much as possible, and then gain time and focus and invest this time on things that which matters for them, for their function, for their business, to move faster forward.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for everybody who's joined today. Thank you for joining us. And as we're going to share a link in the chat, just including a quick video demo of some of the functionality and the AI capabilities I've mentioned that DeepStream has. But other than that, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
all right. See you guys.
Bye bye.